a very, very famous politician stroke jailed person, let's say, appeared at the airport. So this gentleman was very charming, came to drop me. And this guy appeared and there were like 100 people around him, and he was not handcuffed, but it was a pretty intimidating scene. So I saw this gentleman, my friend, there was a pillar, जैसे airport में होते हैं ना, तो वो थोड़ा पीछे छुप गए. So I firstly didn't know who this guy is. So I turned to him and said, "Who's this guy?" So he gave me the name. I said, "Oh shit, this is this guy." तो I said, "आप पीछे क्यों हट गए?" तो इसलिए नामी स्कूल चलाया ना, उनकी तरफ से फोन आया था एडमिशन के लिए. मैंने कहा उनका फोन एडमिशन के लिए आया और आपने मना कर दिया. As one of my professors in college said, who used to write and use she instead of he, and so someone said, "Why do you keep saying she?" He said, "Because for 10,000 years we forgot to say it, so it's okay to say it a few extra times now." And I think that's a pretty good reason. That for a long time I think we said he way too often. So why not she? It's no different. It's the same thing. And then COVID happened. And everything came crashing down. Everything. Cash flows froze on 23rd of March. We anyway serve small schools.
Yeah.
Anyway, getting paid is a big challenge. These guys were like, parents have stopped paying us. We have no money. What do we do? And so on and so forth. We are at a team in multiple countries. Our expenses were at a certain level. Because of COVID, or I don't know what, my own health took a big setback. And it seemed like a 2.0 of all the dark clouds suddenly coming all over again. One should not do a PhD unless you have a physical pain in your body to solve some problem. A lot of people in India go pursue PhDs because you want to be called doctor and get a fancy title. Terrible, terrible reason. You know, when you go into the mountains, पहाड़ों में आप छोटे छोटे घरों में जाते हो, वो आपको पानी देते हैं, चाय देते हैं, कई बार बोलते हैं अगर रहना है तो रह जाओ, खाना भी देते हैं. I would come back and tell my mother, you know, in Delhi if someone came to our house, we would shoo them away. And I think that was the seed of wanting to do something for people other than your family and friends. औरों के लिए करना is not a very normal instinct, I think.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Badhta India Dekho, a fresh episode on someone who has completely reformed the education industry through something that is a buzzword these days, experiential learning. Now imagine thinking of experiential learning almost a decade and a half back, where you can actually say that every concept that we learn in school can be done through activities. Every concept that we have learned in maths, science, English, social science and all those other difficult subjects of our school can actually be experienced before you learn it. Yes, today we have Ashish Rajpal with us, who is the founder of XSEED Education, who is not only going to talk to us about his journey with XSEED, but is also going to talk about what impact does an education company have on the society overall, on the youth of today, on the India that is coming up in the future. And also myself, having worked with Ashish very closely when I was an employee with XSEED Education, this is going to be an action-packed, entertainment-driven and a very, very informative episode on Badhta India Dekho. Enjoy the same. Thank you so much, Ashish, for coming to Badhta India Dekho. It's our absolute pleasure to have you on this platform, and more so personally for me, having worked with you for a long time and seeing you go through the struggles and hardships on a daily basis to build something real for India, for Bharat as we call it. Our podcast series is also a dedication to entrepreneurs like you who have lived their life trying to build something meaningful, and therefore it's a fantastic addition to have you with us. I hope you also feel the same about coming here.
Oh, definitely. Anytime for you, Debojit. It was a pleasure to know you, work with you. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ashish. I would love to understand, to start with this particular chat, on starting from your early days, on where do you think this entire person started forming up? Was it right from your school days where you felt that you want to stand out among the crowd and do something meaningful, even in those small assignments and classworks that maybe you would have at school? Or was it something that started from college itself? If you can take us through your journey right from the beginning, till you maybe hit college, that phase.
So the person as in me.
Yes.
Right? Well, I grew up in a middle class home in Delhi, and both my parents were very educated, but no money in the house. So there was a constant stress of not having enough, but thankfully enough to go to a school and get a decent education. I was an okay student. I grew up in a house where my brother and sister would come first. So coming fourth or fifth was like you were a non-person. And but I think a few things made an impression in my growing years. One was going to the mountains. It was so hot in Delhi, and thankfully my mother encouraged us to go trekking and spend time in the mountains, playing tennis, little bit of public speaking, like you have debating and stuff in school. But I can't say I was very serious about anything for much of school. And then the big board exam thing happened, and I didn't do great in my 12th board, and my dad was so keen I should go to IIT. Why? Because he went to IIT. And I made what now seems like a really stupid decision. I said I'm going to take a year off and prepare for IIT. And I still didn't get into IIT. Like your life is supposed to end then, right? That is supposed to be the end of life. And but anyway, one picked oneself up and went to college and all of that. And it was, I think the writing of the CAT and the MBA exams is when I finally woke up, said, shit, I have to do something serious with my life and get a job and get out of my middle income existence. And I think along that journey, I discovered the desire to do something for other people. And I think we may have spoken about it, that came from the mountains. You know, when you go into the mountains, पहाड़ों में आप छोटे छोटे घरों में जाते हो, वो आपको पानी देते हैं, चाय देते हैं, कई बार बोलते हैं अगर रहना है तो रह जाओ, खाना भी देते हैं. I would come back and tell my mother, you know, in Delhi, if someone came to our house, we would shoo them away. And I think that was the seed of wanting to do something for people other than your family and friends. औरों के लिए करना is not a very normal instinct, I think. So, yeah, many other things, but I would pick that one moment which was...
You picked up two themes while you spoke. One is, of course, parenting. And you spoke about a lot of Indian families do the same, where they push their children into a profession that the child may have no interest in. I have gone through the same during my childhood. I was godforsaken born in Kharagpur. The city doesn't have...
IIT, that's the Kharagpur my father went to. Oh God, I heard so much about it.
and the city doesn't have anything else other than that IIT.
And the long platform.
True. And therefore, my father was in Indian Railways, and the only dream he had was that I get into IIT. And my extended family members went into depression when I did not get into IIT. Forget about my parents. And they used to come home telling that how ill they are. My Mausi, my Chacha, my Mama, because I haven't gotten into IIT.
So true.
And that's happening at my home just after IIT results are out, where I felt that I'm a reasonably okay student. And suddenly feeling the world has come crashing down. So the question is, on parenting, on what do you think school students have to be exposed to right in the beginning? And then I'll go back to your story from college onwards. But what are the 2-3 things you suggest as a parent when they're bringing up a child right from kindergarten to maybe class 7th, 8th, till he or she starts thinking for himself, that phase when they're not able to think for themselves?
देखो, हमने जो सीखा है, talent must come first. I think parent की पहली duty है, and not every parent is an expert. I mean, everybody tries. Every parent is well-meaning. That where is the genius of the child? Because every child has something. It may not be visible. Some children are more naturally, visibly talented. But it could be in anything. Could be in math, could be in music, could be in sport, could be in helping others. And I think we can spend a lot of time talking about the education system and what's wrong with it. But I think this duty lies at home to try, by the time she's 12 or 13, what is this girl's thing? If possible. First, talent. And I think, like we were discussing just before the show, then around that and other things, kitna exposure de sakte hain? This whole business of experience, trying out things, going out of the comfort zone. If you can afford it, go out of town. Encouraging that. And of course, third is the safety mandate. But can the arena be broad?
Yeah, the Lakshman Rekha be broader, where you can play.
Yeah, like one of the disagreements my parents used to have is, my mother thought it's okay for us to go into the mountains and trek for 14 days, and my dad thought that is crazy. But my dad was a product of his childhood. He was a partition refugee. He had seen horrible things. So, can you blame him? But thankfully, my mother won that argument. So,
we have someone like you, therefore maybe among us. So one thing that I run a company called Cracked, and one thing that we encourage our college going students is to find stories out of the simple facts that are happening in their daily lives. It could be the interaction over dining table that you rightly mentioned right now. It could be while they're going to college or coming back to college, what all did they see and experience around them, which maybe they would want to impact in the future. Of course, it could be related to their studies and projects and internships and experiences also. But how are they looking at each opportunity as a learning opportunity for future, or each interaction, even if they're going to a party or even if they're scrolling Instagram? Can they pause somewhere and say, hey, this is something that I would want to also implement to make my life better? And then we ask them to journal all of those experiences, and that becomes a credit score in our course. That, okay, just coming out of daily experiences of life. Now that you've seen and run an education company for more than 2 decades, do you think something of this can add to the experience bucket for the student? It is more useful than what they are asked to do more formally?
Well, I'll take a slight detour to answer your question. And this has happened multiple times. You go to a small school, and which is not very high in school fee. You sit next to a 9-year-old kid in grade 5, and you ask them to read a paragraph in English, and sometimes they'll rattle it off. And then I ask in Hindi or someone who speaks Tamil that, can you explain what you just read? And you will get a blank stare. Okay. And similarly, if you give 4 lines in the workbook, you've seen the XSEED workbook, and say, so what did you think of your day yesterday? It's like a very puzzling question. And initially I would get a little impatient with the children. Come on, I'm just asking you, how was your day yesterday? And till someone one day said, nobody's ever asked me how was my day yesterday. So this thing, you're doing a service by suddenly teaching 22-year-olds how to think about their day yesterday. Nobody's ever asked my opinion on how was the food, or how was the day, or did you like this? It seems very foreign, and then you have to memorize some answer. But just, okay, you didn't do it for 20 years, just do it 40-50 times. Just say, there's a green plant here, so what do you think of it? It's like, oh God, nobody ever asked me, what do I say about a plant? Or there's this lovely lady coming from here. What do you think? So that batting practice is missing. It's not like they can't think. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So in fact, when you were telling me about these people and the exercise you do with them, I'm like very curious, how those 30, 40 hours go, and from kind of memorized, does it become a little bit more authentic? And then at the end of 40 hours, they say, I don't need to practice for this. It's
flowing through naturally, at least for a percentage of them.
Yeah, and what we call, you're familiar with that, the unafraid child. It's not that I can't say that I love this green plant. I'm just afraid to say it because then I don't know what people will think. Am I saying it wrong? Am I saying it in the wrong accent? Am I using the wrong word? I don't know. So many cobwebs we have in the head. But that's one of the great joys in education. That someone who's blocked or afraid, and you make them slightly more unafraid. Easier for children, harder for what you're doing.
Coming back to your journey, and then post the education in India, of course, you worked for a while and had, as we all know it, a very comfortable job based out of Paris, and there was nothing much that one would desire of after that kind of a childhood, at least in terms of material satisfaction. That okay, I have a great job, I have a great salary, I can kind of almost show off back in India. This is all that I have now. And of course, even then the standard of living would have significantly changed already. Now, even staying in that job, you could have done something of impact. May not be of this scale, but maybe possibly. What led to that transition for someone like you to say that, okay, leave all of that and start struggling forever? I mean, we speak to...
I didn't know that. Oh, thank you for telling me that I'm struggling forever.
That's true.
It's kind of true, yeah, it is.
And we speak to a lot of founders on this set also. Someone who's built a unicorn, someone who's just started.
Everybody is struggling.
There's no difference.
Everybody's struggling.
The world might see them differently, that okay,
Sure.
this person is now crazy successful and therefore there's so much to learn, and this is just a newbie, there's nothing to learn, but they're all in the same boat.
Sure.
So how did you choose this journey? How did that transition happen?
Well, hindsight is 2020, and what I'm going to tell you is my current best awareness, and I've said this before. And it's not like the decade I spent in the corporate world was all rosy. Of course, materially, my life became unrecognizable in a very short period. Maybe right time, right place. But I think a couple of things is, I was very fortunate first couple of years. I started my career in Procter & Gamble, and some great people I worked with, good training. That was the real MBA. That was the real how to work. But I lost my father when I was 25. I was in the US, couldn't make it in time. My mother got cancer. Many other issues. So it was like a challenging 20s, There was stuff happening all the time. But like you rightly said, materially things moved, and normally a lot of people would say, now don't disturb it. But the birth of my daughter was a very big thing for me. Of course, it is for most people, but then a lot of people perhaps kids happen. And if you grew up in North India, then men are not that involved in the birthing or raising of kids in the early period. But partly perhaps because we were abroad, and for other reasons, it was a very moving experience. And I got interested in children for the first time. And then the second one came along. I got curious about differences in children. And then वो कीड़ा तो था ही कि कुछ करना है, that Himalayan कीड़ा you can call it. And so then I started researching, okay, then what do I do with children and education? And I didn't know that Harvard has a graduate school of education. Everybody knows the business school, right?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. I was that ignorant. But then I found out about someone called Howard Gardner. I started reading his books. And then one thing led to another. And then it was like obsession stage. कि अब ये करना है. So I quit my job, went back to school. Family was away, challenges of its own kind.
True.
And then jumped into this massive ocean.
Coming therefore to XSEED, and how were the initial few years? Lot of young entrepreneurs watching this show, and right now, last few years, even entrepreneurship sounds very glamorous, and it seems that you're going to get famous very quickly, and things will fall in place very fast. Investors or angel investors are kind of sharks are waiting for you to invest in you. Coming from you, based on your experiences, and therefore suggesting to people who would want to start something of their own, how are the initial first few years when you started, and therefore how will it be mostly for them?
Yeah, just to set the record straight. So XSEED is 10 years old formally.
Sure.
But I've been in education longer. I used to run another company where we were doing pilots using the program.
Yeah.
But I think my counsel to anyone who's even thinking of this is do not start something unless you're really passionate about a problem you want to solve. There are far easier ways to make money.
Sorry, I'm interrupting you. How do we identify passion fundamentally?
जिसको दिल्ली में कीड़ा कहते हैं. And some people may find it at 18, some people may find it at 38. But I think, and this connects back to finding your talent, exploring around. If you try 100, if you kiss 1,000 frogs, you'll find one prince, so on and so forth. So we can talk more about how do you discover it. But many years ago, someone told me one should not do a PhD unless you have a physical pain in your body to solve some problem. A lot of people in India go pursue PhDs because you want to be called doctor and get a fancy title. Terrible reason. I don't know if you know some. I know lots of people who went to the US for a PhD, gave it up and converted it into a master's degree. Right. So I think entrepreneurship is like that. Chances are it's going to be very hard. As Elon Musk says, you have an idea and that idea is usually wrong. And the process of entrepreneurship is about making it right. And it's mostly trial and error. And at some point, you'll run out of money, you'll run out of friends, God forbid, worse things. And you'll only want to keep going on because you've got this bug in your bonnet that you really want to solve this problem. Junoon jisko kehte hain. And it could be a love marriage, it could be arranged marriage, metaphorically speaking. Yeah. But you find out. But if that thing is not there, and if you've just started it because someone was willing to invest money behind you, or your friend did it, or you think there's a lot of money chasing startups in India, which is true because there are very few options outside India right now, it seems. I would discourage that. I think that's a terrible idea. India is taking off. There are a lot of corporate jobs. You know that. I mean, you can make a decent living, good money, have a comfortable life. Why mess with this? Getting rich and famous, I think, is a side effect. If that's your main effect, at least I would be dissuading. Because the chances are also pretty low.
Very
people
low.
Yeah, people don't talk about how many people fail as entrepreneurs. And back in the day before COVID, one of my friends and board members, he was like, you're all the time thinking of the future, all the time thinking future. Can you take 1 minute to savor your success? Do you realize how successful you are? And I was like, I don't think I'm that successful. We have to go very far. In fact, I feel the same way now that we're just getting started. But he said, no. I think you should take time to think about that. So I feel very grateful for it. But as you mentioned, that I'm a PhD in struggle. And so beware what you're getting into. If you want it badly enough, there's nothing better in the world.
So, as you rightly mentioned, the success rate, I was reading a McKinsey report, is 0.7% for even surviving 2 years.
Correct.
99.3% organization shut down in 2 years. And then maybe you can count it as experience or whatever, but you've still kind of not taken it forward and moved on. From your personal experience perspective, how were the first few years of XSEED, let's say, that you mentioned that is, let's say, in the market for about a decade now? First 2 to 3 years, was it immediate hitting the bullseye, or was it a few changes that you had to go through before kind of finding the right sweet spot? Do you feel that you found the sweet spot now, or have found it a few years back? So initial few years in realizing, okay, I'm now on the right track as an entrepreneur.
Great question. So I think the answer to everything is to the number 2, and I'll come to in a moment what that means. I think in the beginning, there is what I would call the pre-XSEED period, and which was 4 or 5 years of a lot of struggle. I don't know if you want to get into all of that, but every possible thing that could go wrong would go wrong. And tried many different models, tried teacher training, tried consulting, tried setting up schools. I set up 8 schools before I started XSEED.
There's one in Gurgaon that you had set up.
Right. Yeah. So, and those are not called XSEED or associated with XSEED, but very rich experience. But could not find, because my vision was do something that would benefit the ordinary guy at scale. How do you make the underdog a winner? Yeah. That's the best story, right? That's the best movie, when the underdog wins. Yeah. So that's the idea of XSEED. Can the underdog win? And that was not easy. And so it took a long time. I obviously came from some savings, lost all that money, health, marriage, everything suffered. And it seemed like to most of my well-wishers too much of a price to pay, and that this guy's gone mad basically. And maybe I had, but for whatever it's worth, I persisted. And then when the idea of XSEED came out, and that really came out of teaching grade 4 myself, as you know, then the sun started showing up, school started showing interest. I had no plans to raise funds. Suddenly this whole private equity VC market started taking off. Someone said, why don't you raise some money? We got 10 term sheets. It suddenly feel whatever you're doing is going right. Until quite recently, whatever you're doing was going wrong.
Yeah.
And the difference is that you have to really care for it and keep trying till the wrong idea becomes right idea. So that was phase 1. And then for 5-6 years, we had a very golden run and scaled up. Then formally incorporated XSEED, went international, opened up Philippines, and so on and so forth. And then COVID happened. And everything came crashing down. Everything. Cash flows froze on 23rd of March. We anyway serve small schools.
Yeah.
Anyway, getting paid is a big challenge. These guys were like, parents have stopped paying us. We have no money. What do we do? And so on and so forth. We are at a team in multiple countries. Our expenses were at a certain level. Because of COVID, or I don't know what, my own health took a big setback. And it seemed like a 2.0 of all the dark clouds suddenly coming all over again. And
this is 2020.
Yeah, 2020. And by then, private equity in India had funded so many companies. We had like 40, 50 companies that had gone and copied the XSEED model.
Right.
And suddenly, from being a unique world pioneer, you become like one of the crowd, cash crunch, don't know what to do. But I think that's what the whole game is about, because it's not a one-time activity. You have to constantly kind of wake up and then say, fine, I need to cut cost, I need to innovate, I need to do this better, I need to inject tech. We thankfully just acquired a tech company just before COVID, and we went crazy into launching our tech application, which is called the Super Teacher app, and many other initiatives. A lot of humility had to be injected in to say, dude, tighten the belt, bring it down, make it work. And yeah, I think after 2.5 years, again the hockey stick started rising, and so I think we are back on track. We are profitable again. We are a tighter team. We are a lot more watchful. We have a massive innovation agenda. We have a roadmap for the next 2 years. And then sometimes, including my kids along the way, like, why don't you just sell it? Isn't enough, dad? I'm like, you guys are busy and this is what I care for. And you've seen me along the way, I still wear the same clothes. I mean, it really depends what you care for, you know. If my goal in life was to buy a really fancy car, and I grew up in a home without one, so it really mattered, I would have done that. I could have done that at 29. And I'm not saying this to boast or say, oh, I'm so cool that I don't need these things. I'm just not wired that way. I'm just wired this way. And so why not? And so that's where the energy comes. Even now, I chat with 9-year-olds at the airport or a train station or in a classroom. It's great talking to them. Teenagers are a bit different. They're awkward. They don't like older people so much. But a 9-year-old, you can just get them worked up, right? So yeah. So many, and who knows, there'll be more challenges in the future. But like I mentioned to you, I think we're just getting started. India has 250 million children, dude.
Yeah.
And 200 of them right now are very, very far away. This whole world which we see around us is tiny, 2%, 3%. And I think there are not 2 Indias, but 3 Indias. And each of those needs its own solution. We won't be able to solve every problem, but at least we can make our contribution.
Have you been able to develop a so-called formula to address this problem? Because this is at a certain age, and the XSEED philosophy, as you would mention, has that 5A approach inside the classroom, right? Aim, action, analysis, application, assessment, which kind of takes the child through experiential learning that a lot of organizations boast that they are doing, which is experiential learning. And the ones that you rightly mentioned, there are a lot of them that cropped up which had a very similar model in schools over the last almost 6-7 years. What is that philosophy, if you want to kind of explain to our audience in brief, and why do you think it works? And the biggest problem in upskilling, especially in softer skills, that I am also facing on a daily basis, is how do you measure it? If someone has become better in speaking, communication, let's say, how do I measure it objectively to say that, okay, he was a 3 on 10 and now he's a 5 on 10, let's say, on speaking ability? So first, how does your model work? And overall, how do you put measurability assessment? Yeah.
This may be a grand thing to say, but where XSEED is deployed in small schools with moderate to low fee, it works. If I got hit by a bus, someone should pick this idea and find a better way than me to scale it, because it works. It works in slums of Maharashtra. It works outside slums of Manila. It's not linked to one race or ethnicity. It has been proved in multiple geographies. But it has to be implemented. The resistance around a program like XSEED is, as you well know, is teachers find it hard to change their ways. Often school leadership are not academic people. The owners of schools may be business oriented. They say, look, I cannot enforce this. I can't get involved. So appetite for change is limited. Having said that, there's some wonderful people which we've stumbled into, wonderful teachers who work hard, which is why the program works. The program has touched 2 million children. We've retrained 100,000 teachers. Haven't forced them. So that's happened. Now, what is it? The thing is, again, what we were talking about. You can think of XSEED as the problem-solving method. If you think people who are successful in life, in jobs, are those who can solve problems, then don't you think all of school education should be practiced to solve problems? But for some reason we don't do that. We say school education should be about memorizing and writing tests and passing, and then suddenly you have to solve a problem. Giving a speech is a problem.
Yeah.
Running a meeting is a problem. Inventing a new formula is a problem. Saving 10% cost is a problem. Opening a new market and selling in is a problem. Making a podcast successful is a problem. So this XSEED method basically says, let's take every topic and teach it in a problem-solving way, which means let the child do some kind of activity, some kind of experiment. Let the child make some mistake, trial and error. Take a ball bearing and a feather and drop both of them. Why does the feather take longer? Why does the ball bearing go quickly? Every day, if you're thinking about something in a practical way, but don't stop there. Then get into a conversation with the teacher. Step 3 is dialogue. In that we say 50-50. Half the time teacher should talk, but half the time the student should. How do people learn to speak English? The secret is by speaking English. But in the class, if all the time you're being told, shut up, don't talk, be quiet, stand outside, won't happen. It's like, it's okay, no problem. You can mix it with Hindi. आधा हिंदी में बोलो, आधा इंग्लिश में बोलो. Accent भी खराब है, कोई problem नहीं. बोलो तो सही. To welcome the thoughts of the children. Then we go into what I call Asian mode. Practice, practice, practice. Step 4. I think this is where a lot of the Western countries lost their way. They had very creative topics, very creative entry into subject matter, but not enough of the rigor. Excellence needs that. If you want to become a good bicycle rider, then you have to fall many times, keep practicing, keep practicing. And step 5 is assessment, which was your other question, right? Then how do you assess? So in our cases, we've developed a whole skills test. It's called the Learnometer. Every November, like a mini board exam or SAT style, except it's all based on skills. What the new education policy and the CBSE shuffle and all, we've been talking about this for 10 years. So our challenge is, of course, we can improve the program in many ways, the product in many ways, but anyone who knows XSEED, even our worst enemy will say the product is very strong. It's how do you make acceptance inside schools and teachers to bring about this change more. And I think the measurement aspect is a very important, because once you start showing the results, then people will become more receptive. In the area you picked, I think we can talk a long time about measurement, because I spend a lot of time thinking about it. But there could be simple things, you know. So suppose you are measuring on, can this person speak for 1 minute about themselves?
Yeah. This is like an elevator pitch, let's say.
Yeah. You could have 2 or 3 very simple metrics. Did you understand what this person said? Does the listener understand? Just yes, no. Were they able to persuade you about something that is unique about them? Would you remember this speech in 3 months from now? Just yes, no. There's obviously a subjectivity in that, right? Another metric is consistency. So suppose they do it every week, and 4 times in 4 weeks, if the answers to all these are yes, I'm telling you have a winner on your hand.
Right.
Because occasionally anyone can kind of do a great job, but doing it consistently is a huge. So I think simplifying metrics sometimes around the problem solving mode. Now, what is the problem here? Is the problem to introduce yourself? Is it the problem to communicate, to persuade, to sell?
Beautifully explained. The problem solving thought process, that am I looking at each one of the things that are going to come in my practical life as the problems that I'll face, and therefore is my mind thinking solutions, or is my mind waiting for someone else to give a solution which I'll just follow? And as famously said, people always want to be led. Someone else कोई बाहर से आएगा, हमें समझा देगा कि ये कर लो, and we would want to do that. खुद कौन बैठ के solve करेगा? ये तो बहुत बड़ा responsibility है. If I'm saying I have to solve a problem. अगर हम क्रिकेट भी बचपन में खेलते थे, बॉल जाके नाली में गिरता था तो देयर वुड बी जस्ट वन पर्सन हु वुड से कि यार मैं जाके निकालता. Others would be like मैं नहीं जा रहा due to whatever.
There should be a recruitment team there. That is the guy to hire.
Correct.
You should make a nali offer then and there.
If I have to kind of change the direction a little bit and ask you a little bit on the external factors that kind of comes into play when you're running an organization. I'll start with competition, and XSEED over the years has faced not faced competition or has had competition. Up to you on how you look at it. And all entrepreneurs, irrespective of the field, unless they're an absolutely new domain that has never happened before, will have competition. What's your advice to aspiring entrepreneurs on how they should look at competition when they are starting something of their own? And how have you done it in all these years?
Well, when I started, I was this so-called new domain.
Yeah.
XSEED was a pioneer. Nowhere in the world is a model like this. Brazil had something called the Sistemas in the 90s, but that was more like a tuition coaching class module packaged and brought into schools because those kids supposedly did well. But to create a total experience problem solving based program in which children are dialoguing, learning on their own, much like the IB program or international schools for this was crazy. Which is why we had a great 6-7 year run where people were like, what the hell is going on here? All the big publishing companies tried to buy us. I've met all the CEOs. They used to wine and dine us, try and find out what's going on. They were like, this is crazy. I mean, but I think the big learning is competition will come sooner or later. Howsoever unique your proposition, howsoever difficult the domain, if you are growing, there is some bacon there which is going to excite the others. So be prepared. And the only answer to that, I think, especially in India, I mean, how many patents and legal battles are you going to get into? Innovation is the only way. So if you get even a little bit complacent so XSEED has had a history, thank God, where every 2.5 years it comes with a major new release and innovation, which has saved us many times. I asked some of my school owner friends, sometimes over a drink we'll joke. I said, you're now with us for 10-12 years. Sometimes don't you think you should try something else? So, हाँ हर साल सोचते हैं पर डर लगता है कि हम छोड़ेंगे और तुम कुछ नया ले आओगे. So I said, oh, that is a great dar to have. That's a good reputation to have. But I think, as Bezos says, beyond a point, face the customer, don't face the competition. If you are close to the customer, and in our case, the challenge is, schools are kind of my customer, but my real customer is the parent. Maybe we should spend more time trying to understand their needs and serve them through our work in schools. And so many things which we can do to improve ourselves. Competition also keeps you awake, right? Keeps you running, keeps you fit, keeps you paranoid. But it will come. If there are some young folks out there who don't have it, mark my words, it will come, and better to be prepared for it.
Therefore, coming to customers, and first of all, whom do you ideally identify as customers? Is it the school owner, or is it that parent and student who is studying in the school? And as an organization, what are some 2 or 3 things you do to keep remaining close to them and being aware of what's going on in their lives at all points of time?
So, I think my core users are the teacher and the child. I would like to call schools our partners. My real customer is the 35-year-old mom. So, women who have young children, I mean, she may be 29 or she may be 40, but my bullseye is the middle class mom who's 35 years old and wants her child to do better than she did. And I think that's a very powerful motivator. we do a lot to keep in touch with our schools, our teachers, even children. You know, I took a year to teach grade 4 and all of that. But I think we should do more to be closer to parents, to understand them better. And I think one of the few upsides of social media amongst its many, many downsides is that offers many opportunities to keep in touch with your customers and partners in different ways. And I think we can do a lot more in that area.
Speed versus quality, and it sometimes feel that the surrounding as well as you yourself run the risk of losing interest if speed is not good enough. By speed I mean speed of expansion, speed of business, how big you are, versus quality, which constantly has to be innovated. Of course, you have to hit the bullseye first to say that okay, I have at least an MVP which looks high quality, but then executing that quality over scale is another ball game altogether. So, do you think they are independent of each other, or do you think they overlap?
I think the best answer I have for this is speed once you have quality. I think that famous book, Thinking Fast and Slow. I think there are times to do things slow and there are things to do fast. When you are in the invention stage and piloting, prototyping, testing, I think rushing that beyond a point can become very counterproductive. And the debatable thing is, what is an MVP? What is a minimum viable product? If you're a picky, perfection-oriented kind of product founder, that bar will be very high. If you're more a salesy kind of founder and says, okay, customer's not picking up too much of a problem with this, why don't we go faster? So there's a judgment involved. I probably belong to the former category. But once you get it, I think then sometimes we don't move fast enough. And I've made that mistake. Get into a perfection trap, try to do too much of the improvement. And later, I think sprints work in the sense you get it to a stage, then you go really fast.
And then come back.
And depending on whatever the cycle time for your industry is, 6 months, 9 months, 15 months, then go back. And then if you're really great at doing this, which I'm not, then you should have two parallel teams. One which is flying the plane, and the second which is changing the plane at all the times. But hey, I don't think anybody gets this right. So, but yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
Is there anyone you really look up to, and what do you pick up from those people?
Well, not that many in my domain. I feel that's one thing I've missed. No role models, and in a way it's good. I think if you want to do great things, then you have to chart your own path. But yeah, I mean, like everybody, a lot of the great US businesses, I mean, there's lots to learn from the Apple story, from what Bezos has done in a relatively short period of 25 years. Has kind of invented something. What Elon Musk is doing, I mean, these are obviously exceptional geniuses of our time, and they're very flawed people, but many things. I think recently Brian Chesky from A&B started kind of being more public and sharing his learnings, and there seems to be a lot there. And there are many others, lesser known people. To be honest, and some people may not like, I miss role models in India, to be honest. I think there's an opportunity for real innovation stories. But we are a young country. I mean, just from time of constitution, we are 75 and they are 250 or whatever. So we are a very young country. Our time will come in that department.
Fair. We have the last section, Ashish, coming up, which is the rapid fire section. We don't have the Jaguar lights, that's the only difference, but the section sounds very similar. Only expectation is if you can answer quickly and be as brief as possible.
Okay.
And these
Let me pay attention. Okay.
These are mostly one line answers, so not too long. But this is also a kind of live lesson for others to just be spontaneous and speak your mind for everyone. Whenever you're ready, we can start.
Go for it.
Okay, so first question, Ashish, what's your favorite educational tool? that you have experienced?
I think any skills test is a great tool.
Skills test?
Yeah, skills
Fantastic.
test.
What's a must-read book for especially people in the education space?
Many books I can think of, but I think if you think of I'm thinking right now of Aurobindo's book on the meaning of education.
It's a lovely book. I've had the fortune of reading it. What's your go-to method for de-stressing?
Climb a mountain.
And do you have a mountain nearby where you can climb on and off?
Well, if you're in Delhi, it's in the Himalayas. In Southeast Asia, there are several places.
Sure.
There's Kinabalu, and of course, if you're lucky to go to Japan or other places, yeah, you can find a mountain. It may be a hill, but
Sure.
climb something. If you can't find them, climb stairs.
A trend in education that excites you?
I think more and more people being able to discover their talent is happening. There's more appreciation, there's more possibility. So I think that's...
Okay. Most challenging aspect of your work at XSEED till now?
Finding people with open minds.
And does the threshold of being open change from person to person? At least in your mind, has it evolved?
Well, I think, some people maybe become more open over time, but I think as a rule, some people are more open than others. Some people are more welcoming of change. I want those people. If anyone there is hearing that, please call me. I want people who want change in their lives.
Okay, what would have been your alternative career path if not this?
I would have gone to the graduate school of design. My father was an architect. I might have become a designer. I think I would have been a half decent one.
Very interesting. What's your favorite way to stay physically active?
Walk, run when I can, climb mountains, like I said.
Okay. One reform you would want to implement globally. Forget about the countries you are in. Globally, you would want to implement it. Let's say you have a magic wand. You want to use it and implement it globally.
That, just like you have a medical report, you should have by grade 8 a whole transcript on a child which tells you everything about what makes that child great. And every story of the child from the time they were 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 should magically appear on it. And that becomes the basis for the child taking decisions for himself or herself thereon.
Okay. What is one of your most memorable classroom moment? You've been a teacher, you've been, of course, an overall educationist. Most memorable classroom moment?
Yeah, I'll mention the Duckworth classroom. I think of all my years, even though that was a teacher teaching children for other educators, but that was absolutely magical, learning how to teach fractions with chocolate blocks and permutation combination with clips, I think.
Beautiful. What's your dream destination, if at all there is one?
Oh, there are many places around the world I love. Did I get the question right?
Yes.
Love South Africa, love Japan, love the Himalayas, many places.
One historical figure in education or...
I love New York City, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, one historical figure in education you would want to meet?
Ooh, so many. John Dewey for sure. John Dewey for sure, I'm thinking. And maybe Waldorf as well. Amongst the Indian educators, I think, Sri Aurobindo.
What would be the last line of your autobiography, if it is written, Ashish?
And he carried on.
Thank you so much, Ashish, for coming to Badhta India Dekho. It was
lovely
fantastic.
to see you. You're great at this, I told you. So I enjoyed the chat. Thank you so much.
Fantastic speaking to you. I am sure the audience would have taken back a lot from the conversation we have had today. It rarely happens that someone as experienced, as open to come and share their thoughts, their journey, their hardships, successes, all small bits of what made them who they are. Thank you, Ashish, again for coming on the show.
Lovely.
I would love to stay in touch in future to building Badhta India Dekho, and maybe adding a little bit to building XSEED also as we go along in the way.
Anytime. I'll take you very seriously on that one. See you.
Thanks, Ashish.
Bye-bye.
So how was it? This was actually a conglomeration of personal anecdotes, a lot of examples from professional life that we could all connect to, link back to, and therefore identify that unafraid 9-year-old child that is actually looking forward to all of us, to helping him or her and making him a successful, relevant citizen of our country. I hope you enjoyed Ashish's conversations and it left you something to think about on how we should look at the education of our children and the generations coming up. This and a lot more in the episodes of Badhta India Dekho on entrepreneurship, on success, on growth, on failure and on life. Keep watching us.